Wallace with NLADA, and the session that we're about to start is Building Sustained Partnerships with Funders, Contributors, and Supporters. So if that's where you plan to be this afternoon, you're in the right place. If not, we won't be offended if you're in the wrong room. However, once I introduce this distinguished panel, you may decide you want to stay, even if that's the case. I would like to start with our distinguished panel of philanthropists with, from my right, going to my left. Welcome Max Laun, who is Vice President and General Counsel, who oversees the day-to-day operations of Arconic's legal activities worldwide. He's also an engaged nonprofit board member and leader. He's on the NLADA board and chair of NLADA's Corporate Advisory Committee. He has served as a board member and board president for Neighborhood Legal Services and serves on the board of the Pennsylvania Legal Aid Network Plan, among many others. Welcome, Max. To my left is Jack London, who's a partner with Morrison & Foerster's Intellectual Property Group. He's had 35 years of experience in patent litigation and complex commercial litigation, has a long-standing relationship with NLADA and currently serves on the NLADA board. He has previously served on the NLADA Insurance Program board. He's the Executive Vice President and Treasurer of the Consortium for the National Equal Justice Library and has served as co-chair of the National Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights Under Law, and is a founder of Lawyers for One America and chair of Californians for Legal Aid, among many other organizations. Thank you for being here as well, and welcome.
Okay.
And to Jack's left, I have Sandy McAllister Ambrosi, who's a senior fellow with the Kresge Foundation, focused on civil legal justice, and a longtime advocate and supporter of NLADA. With more than 30 years experience in philanthropy, Sandy has developed expertise in human services, arts and culture, green building initiatives, and civil legal aid. She currently works with partners to strengthen access to civil legal aid, as well as advance policies and laws that expand social and economic mobility. So thank you, and welcome, Sandy. So I want you to know that before I get started, that this is being live streamed on Facebook, so just FYI. And I thank all of our panels in advance for agreeing to spend time and share your experiences. So our concept for the session is really trying to talk about, what are the priority needs of your organization, and then matching those to the right funder, recognizing that that's an art. And once you've decided who that right funder is, how do you get the funder's attention? What are the elements of a good pitch? And how do you know how best to steward that contribution and keep the relationship fresh and strong? So what we wanted to do is explore these questions from the perspectives of sort of different philanthropic sectors, if you will, who our panelists represent. And in a nutshell, to sort of take it from the life cycle of a contribution, from how do you get the initial attention, how do you make the pitch, how do you sustain the relationship, and sort of walk it through in that fashion. We would like this to be interactive. I know from many of the faces I see in this room, as we were saying earlier, some of you could well be up here on the panel as well and have extensive experience. And so while we certainly want to give ample time for the panelists to share their thoughts, we also want to hear from you. So it will be, as I ask the questions, once we get through the panelist round, I'm going to leave opportunity for people in the audience to, if you have a suggestion or experience or idea, to also chime in. So, all right, let's get started. So, first of all, we want to figure out who is here, okay? So that as we're answering questions, we can tailor it as much as possible to the folks who are in your room, in this room. So, for example, if you are a director or chief executive of an organizational legal aid program or other nonprofit, would you raise your, okay, that looks like a good portion of the room. Do we have full-time resource development folks or fundraisers in the room? Okay, and how many of the executives have at least one full-time fundraiser on your staff? How many programs in the room receive foundation funding? How many of you rely on events to raise unrestricted contributions? Okay. And in terms of your annual budget, how many of you are in organizations where budgets are comprised of more than 50% of private, non-governmental funding? All right, so room to grow. Great, thank you. All right, so let's get started. So I don't know about everyone in this room, but we're living in an information age, and there's a constant flow of information, right? So I think the first question I want to ask the panelists is, especially when we're all, and you all as philanthropists, I am sure is, exponentially increased, with all the information flowing at you and coming at you, how do we break through? How do we get your attention in the first place in order to even start the life cycle of a potential contribution? So, Sandy, you're in the foundation world, and I'm sure there's a constant, your inbox is constantly full. Okay. Which ones do you open?
Well, I hope I open all, but again, thank you, Joanne, for having me here and being among this incredible group of people. I feel a little of your pain because part of my role as a senior fellow is to increase philanthropy's interest and awareness and contributions. So I too am knocking on the doors of my philanthropic colleagues and saying, hey, I'm going to be in New York, can I come talk to you? I see that you're interested in justice. Can I, take you to lunch? And, folks for a whole variety of reasons don't open my email either, or return my calls, or so what I'm increasingly learning, and would like to share that, or acknowledge that foundations are not entirely clear about what they support or how they support it. You can go, so first you have to really figure out what their interests are. And you heard earlier, I think common ground is a really important kind of frame to think about. And so if you go to even our website, you'll see we're expanding opportunities in America's cities. Well, of course that would mean sublegally, right? But it's not entirely clear. So what I have found to help me really understand what they mean when they use very lofty terms and really bold language, all very important, is that a lot of times it's the CEO or president's speeches that unpack what they're really interested in, or some program director or program officer if they've given a speech. And then reading closely the grant descriptions, because that's where program officers in particular sort of put the nuance. We're supporting X because it's doing this. And so I think that also kind of starts to help. So I think once you sort of have that deeper level of understanding of what a foundation might be interested in, then you need to take your work and connect the dots. And I know partnership usually implies equalness, but you're going to have to do all the heavy lifting. You're just going to have to be almost adjunct program officers, and you're going to have to just be relentless, respectfully relentless in getting this in front of folks. And so if there are a couple of trends and key issues that are on Foundation radar right now. Homelessness is one of them. And so I would suggest that you reach out to them and say, you know, dear so-and-so Foundation person, I read about your recent initiative to end homelessness. Are you aware of the impact that preventing evictions have on preventing homelessness? We're having a community convening. Would you please come and share your work on this paper? And so right there, it's not about money. It's about information. It's being a thought partner, and it's bringing them into, you know, and honest, Foundation staff really want to be part of the community and learn. And this is a way of just kind of bringing them in on a different level. If they care about, you know, K through 12 education is very important, and helping them understand that preventing evictions in neighborhoods helps kids stay in those neighborhood schools. The Atlanta Volunteers Lawyers Foundation has a great infographic on that. They worked with the school to significantly reduce enrollment turnover. Then in Michigan, we're very involved in neighborhood stability. So if you can, again, help them understand how property foreclosure, tax foreclosure destabilizes neighborhoods, then you can maybe have if nothing else, raise their awareness, but start to have a partnership. At some point, you're going to have to address the myths, and this is what I have learned in my conversations with colleagues. Like Ari was saying, the party trick. Everyone, you know, people think everyone has the right to an attorney. You've got to address that. Then when you do, they do understand that, then they say, well, it's all about suing, litigation, and we don't want to be in that world. Well, no. Then it's all about attorneys. And really, do we want our philanthropic dollars going to attorneys? Because after all, they already make so much money. Deal with that. And then why can't pro bono take care of all this? Another. I'm not saying, you know, you hit them over the head with this information right up front, but just know that that's going on in the swirl of their brain. And then when you break through, then you've got to talk about what are some legal matters. And you may have seen already, there's a terrific video on the Voices for Civil Justice website. It's 70 seconds. What is civil legal aid? And it's a whiteboard description of what it is. It's fabulous. And who doesn't want to have civil legal aid described in 70 seconds?
So Jack, there's a lot of conversation about the fact that philanthropy in the law firm world is changing. So for you, does that mean that getting the attention of law firms is changing as well?
Let me say first, I'm glad to be here. I understand that in order to have an informal conversation, they put us in comfy chairs.
Right.
And you all probably get money from law firms, and if I'm really lucky, and if things are good, I won't tell you anything new. But let me try. And I'm going to speak particularly about large law firms. This will have less applicability to small practices and solos, but large law firms are big institutions and bureaucratic, and they don't share nearly to the extent that we once did the kind of personal linkage where we all know each other and what each other values, and if Chauncey wants to do this, then let's just do it. That's used to be the way, but it's not. I'd say one essential thing is don't take us for granted. Send an email out of the blue, and I predict you'll have rounds to zero chance of getting any result. You have interactions with law firms, and that's the start. Get to know us and know how we make our giving decisions. Over the past 20 years, law firms, myself included, maybe to some extent led by my firm, Morrison Forster, in some respects, we have institutionalized our giving as grant makers. In fact, we have two pots. We have 1% of our net income goes into the Morrison and Foerster Foundation to give away. And we have a marketing budget that goes to pay for dinners and events. You can't get any money from the Morrison Foerster Foundation for an event. That all has to come from marketing. I'm not telling you about us because I expect you all to send emails and applications, but here's the point. Get to know the firm that you're asking for money if you're serious. Keep track. Do what you do for your major donors. From year to year, record who you talk to and what you learn. Use the people you know, whether it's a beginning associate or a senior partner, to enlist them as your partner and ask some questions, because firms are not all the same. For example, what is the structure? How do you decide? When do you decide? Are there subject matter areas of preference? We've, for many years, had a focus on children. Our foundation accumulates pots of money and every few years gives away big grants, $1 million. That's not, we favor working with people with connections with our lawyers. Every firm will do that, because the fact that Chauncey's involved is a plus. So treat us a little bit like you would treat a grant maker. The thing about the foundation discipline, whether it's formally a 501c3 or just a discipline, is that most large law firms have annual giving budgets. You can't send an email in September and get significant money out of an annual giving budget. You can start a relationship, find out who to meet with, explain what you're doing, make a pitch like you would to a grant maker, maybe even to fund a project. Listen to what they say and go back the next year. It can be worth the investment, but find out whether the firm gives a substantial amount of money, or is it all for marketing. Find out if the firm cares about doing things that its clients notice, and know who the clients are that you have relationship with and can encourage. If you have clients who will make a call for you, that can be very, very valuable. But all this comes from treating us as non-fungible sources of money with whom a relationship is necessary to accomplish something long-lasting and significant in size.
And Max, on the corporate side, some might say that that wall is the most challenging to pierce. Is getting your attention different than what we've heard?
I think it's very similar. I mean, much of what I would say on the corporate side is sort of what Jack said. At Arconic and at Alcoa before that, like at Morrison & Foerster, there's corporate funds, and then we have a foundation. We have the Arconic Foundation. The Arconic Foundation hands out $6 to $10 million a year from its endowment. However, and I'm the lawyer to the Arconic Foundation in my current role, but I'm not on their board. It's a bunch of our business people. But they really have three specific areas that they focus on. They focus on STEM, they focus on workforce, and they focus on workforce development. Those are sort of number one and number two. Little bit on community development. It used to be 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that somebody like me, who was fairly senior in the company, would be able to go talk to the foundation and say, hey, I have a pet project, I have something that I'd like to be able to get some funding for better or for worse. They've locked that down, and so our foundation has specific grants that they are specific areas and specific grants. And so if you send something into them that seeks funding for civil justice broadly read, the answer is it's going to fall on deaf ears. So to Jack's point, you really have to dive in and understand what it is their focuses are, and how you can fit your proposal, your round peg proposal into their square hole, or your square peg proposal into their round hole. It really is figuring out how it is you state your ask in that way. Corporations are, and I'll overgeneralize and apologize in advance for doing so. Corporations can be a little bit even harder to understand. I would say at Arconic, for example, 90% of the giving is actually the money that the foundation does. The corporation itself can, based on local business leaders, make some smaller grants and do some smaller things of support. It tends to be really local. It tends to be the Davenport plant will support brothers and sisters of big brothers and big sisters of Davenport. They'll do things like that. So what I would say, very similar to what Jack said, figure out what your connections are with the corporation. I mean, cold calls. I think cold calls or cold emails will fall on deaf ears, or not even be acknowledged. I think what you really need to do is figure out if there is some conjunction between what the corporation is doing, what the company you're going to talk to is doing in your community, and what their interests, where their interests lie, and figure out if you can make a connection there. I'll building on one other thing that Jack said. I have been asked on several occasions to approach law firms that are service suppliers to us, and where it's a worthwhile cause. Obviously, I'm more than willing to do so, and put in a good word on a project. And so that it may be that you can use somebody in the corporation who, because of their personal interests or because of their other connections in the community, has an in to someone else. They say, I don't have any walking around money at the company that I can give, but I'm on the board of X, Y, or Z, and they may be able to do something. It may not be a huge life-changing grant, but you think about this as you have to play a ground game. You're really looking at how can I start small and maybe build up over time. But to start, you have to start small.
So to stay with you, Max, for a minute, let's assume that there's a connection, and we figured out the interest area, so how to get that square peg into the round hole. Let's say you're the connection. Once we connect with you, what is going to get you inspired to be an inside advocate for our cause? What's the pitch?
Well, again, it's going to vary. It's going to vary by organization. I think that you're more likely to get a pitch to succeed at a pitch if you make a specific ask. I mean, again, companies will be more willing to help on a specific project than to say, give me money because my HVA system is on the fritz. It may be if you're approaching carrier, they may in fact be willing to donate the HVAC system. So know your company. But in most cases, I think it's going to be we see an opportunity for you company to partner with us to be a sponsor for an event, to get your name out there, to get some good publicity. If you can tie it into something that the company does, that's better yet. One of the things that we did as Alcoa a number of years ago was we were very much into recycling aluminum. We were the New York City Marathon's aluminum recycling partner, and we put out a whole bunch of recycling bins all along the route, We did it in part because, yeah, we want people to recycle the aluminum cans, but we also did it because there were something like 200 receptacles out there that said Alcoa on it, and that was good marketing in addition. So think about what the company does, where its interests are, whether there's an opportunity for them to have some prominence, because again, you may be able to get the marketing organization interested, even if the accounting organization isn't.
Jack, what about in the law firm arena? What once they have your attention, or what's the content that grabs you? What's the pitch that works?
Well, relationships are the key. I'd say getting your partners within the firm at whatever level to help you identify who decision makers are, whether there's a formal structure, as I said, the calendar, and communicate why they are involved. There can be another important way of getting law firms to give as a firm is to get their lawyers to give individually. Obviously, you're all about that, but you should bear in mind that senior lawyers in big firms do have the ability to give a lot of money individually, and firms will tend to give along with that. Sometimes that can be organized if you have an individual donor as a match. That is best accomplished by getting the lawyers started when they're not yet senior lawyers. As you know, this is just good fundraising. Get people to start and then don't let them away, don't let loose of them. Whatever the number they start at, if you can get young lawyers who work with you on pro bono programs, who support your efforts, do the good donor husbandry for individuals to feed back to them what their work has accomplished, acknowledge their gifts, cultivate them, keep them active, and it will leverage into the law firms. These are relationships. You can't take them for granted. The form letter at the end in October may get you something, but it's not really doing a good job of cultivating the individual donors, and we can give a hell of a lot over the course of a career if we form the habit. Our firms will give more because we do. So I'd say focus on relationships with individuals at the firm. Ask them, who should we talk to? Can you get us an appointment? What do we need to know? What is the schedule? What are your target areas? But it's not a one-size-fits-all.
Can I pitch something to your boss? Yeah.
Yeah,
Those
and the
sorts of
boss may not decide it. There's probably a committee, and they meet every so often. Can we get on the schedule? Don't have in mind that we're going to get on the schedule so that the week after we'll get a check, because it might be the year after.
So Sandy, I think you started going down this line before, but I'll ask you again, if there's anything you want to add in terms of the substance of the pitch and the content. I also want to follow up on something you said before about being relentless. Is there any such thing as being too relentless?
No, I don't think so, at least not with me. I appreciate that. And I have a lot of my grantee partners who really managed up to me and helped me be a better, I hope, better grant maker as a result of their help in understanding how to be informed, how to be responsive, how to be supportive. I would add that I spend a lot of time thinking about defining success, and I think sometimes we focus too much on success is when you get the money. And so I would, two thoughts and then advice. Success is getting a grant that doesn't cause you to go under. Part of what we've seen too often, and some of you may have heard about FEGS in New York, over $200 million organization, too big to fail, they failed. Part of it was that wasn't funding their whole costs. And so I would just really encourage you to be brave and not pursue funding that is not going to cover your costs, and or if you are going to go after funding that doesn't cover it up. To say to the foundation, well, you wanted us to support, help X do this, but you've only given us a quarter of the money, we're not gonna report on achieving all the goals. That's just wrong. The other successful grant or investment is one that has an exit strategy, particularly with foundations. There's an ability to chase a shiny object with great gusto, and especially new foundation support, it should be money that you can fail with in some ways. It's a catalog investment that helps you maybe proof of concept so that you can go back to your regular donors to get more resources. But always have an exit strategy if you want to keep your organization whole. The advice I'd give in terms of after looking at foundations or any potential investor, figuring out what their priorities, their interests are, find a translator. So what I enjoy but have struggled with is your language. I would challenge you to find a foundation website that uses the word litigant, sui generis, even pro se, self-represented, unbundled, or public interest law firm. So as an example, and I have gotten these proposals. In 2018, we represented 100 litigants involved in a range of cases involving family law, unlawful detainer suits, which is not open container, if you read it fast, and debt collection. We successfully closed 80 cases. So, translation machine. In 2018, we helped people stay in their homes, keep their families together, and protect their financial assets so that they could better achieve their hopes and dreams. Lead with the outcomes, not the tool.
So we have talked about attention grabbing, both in terms of process and content, and before we go on to assume that you've gotten that successful contribution, and how do you keep the attention, I'd like to turn to the audience for a minute to see if you have a question about this area before we assume success, or if you have a great success story dealing with grabbing and getting attention that you'd like to share.
Don't everybody volunteer at once.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
There's a mic.
I feel so official. I'm Colleen Cotter from the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland, and you talk from the law firm and corporate perspective about marketing and about philanthropic interests, but I wonder if you could touch on other interests of the law firm or corporation and how we can fit into that. And the example that I have is our ability to get a sizable long-term grant from a law firm through a corporate partner, and really selling to the law firm that the particular project that they're funding meets their diversity and inclusion goals as a law firm. So they sort of took pieces of, they cobbled together the budget of $110,000 a year over 5 years, but really sold it to the partnership about this is meeting our diversity and inclusion goals as a law firm. And I'm just thinking there must be other sort of bigger, either corporate or law firm goals that we could be tapping into that maybe we're not thinking of.
Well, let me start by saying good work. I bet it's because you captured somebody's imagination. And I don't think we should try to reduce that to a formula, but I will, at the risk of being very presumptuous, suggest a state of mind that you should try, a Zen-like state you should try to put yourself into as you frame your pitch and as you deliver it. And in this, I think of my great friend, now gone, Tanya Neiman at Bar Association of San Francisco, because what she did with complete sincerity is think of fundraising as sharing the chance to do good.
Right.
As giving somebody an opportunity. Don't ever think of yourself as imposing a burden. what you're doing is coming up with a way that if they do this thing, they'll be richer. And they'll accomplish, as you say, you have this, the firm has these goals of inclusion, and it cares about, what I heard you say in technical terms is you're drawing from more than one budget.
Yeah.
If we have a client who's interested, that can be funded by the marketing budget and not take our foundation money. But think of the opportunity you're sharing and talk in that way. And you deserve to believe it, because you are making it possible for us to do things we can't do otherwise.
Yeah, and many companies have a value statement, a vision statement, a value statement. Don't be afraid to take that and slap them right in the face, right in the face. You know, I mean, it is. I mean, I've been involved in rewriting some of these things over the year, drafting and redrafting some of these things over the years. And one of the things that if you can come in and say, listen, you say that you want to be a good, that you want to do well for our employees and the communities in which we operate. Show me how you're helping. Show me how you're helping our employees. And it doesn't have to be actual. It can be theoretical. One of the things that we've been successful in convincing ourselves as a corporation, but also many corporations have convinced themselves is the business case both for diversity and inclusion, but also the business case for civil legal aid, which is it keeps our employees, their loved ones, in their houses. It solves problems that they encounter every day, and it enables them to be at work rather than absent or spending time in family court addressing a problem, addressing an issue. So one of the things that civil legal aid can do for employers is it can enable their employees to focus on doing their jobs as opposed to getting stuck in the mundane stuff we deal with in life every day.
So we've captured your attention. We made the great pitch. We have received some support. We talk about those relationships as partnerships. But how involved and engaged do you expect to be as a partner? What does that look like? What's your role in this relationship going forward? Sandy, do you want to start?
Well, we really should be thanking you. I mean, that's just to start there. And there's the sort of technical thank you from the CEO, I think. And, there's probably some foundations that like to be on donor walls and listen to annual reports or not. On the website, social media, all that is sort of a technical piece to the thank you. If you have a board member involved in making the connection, by all means, that person should do the thank you. And when you decline, say you're rejected, you decline, it's try and have a conversation just to say what, not necessarily pitch back to them, but just in general, what was the what did they find compelling about it? What did they struggle with? What could have some clarity? A lot of times the staff person isn't actually the one making the decision, so they may have to, you may actually get some more honest feedback in that sense. I find personally though, the best way that an organization can say thank you to me, in part because a lot of foundations, Dan Kresge at this point, giving to, as much as we're committed to giving to civil legal justice matters, it's still a skinny branch for us. It's work that doesn't have its own program area, doesn't have a budget, that constantly have to make the rationale for it. And the way that you can thank me is by being honest and truthful with me. And that is a mutual trust that we can, if we have that, then we can really move things forward more fully and completely. So that's the way you say thank you to me.
So that partnership starts with gratitude, both ways as I hear you. And once that's happened, how involved a partner
I would say, again, ask the foundation person, because you're gonna have some who you may well like this. All they want to send you the check, they want you to, 12 months go by, you send the final report in, and we're done. And that might be fine. There are others, and I'd say this is where I'm in more of the camp of being a thought partner. Again, I like to not be just viewed as a cash machine. And so when my grantee partners call me up and say, hey, we're thinking about this new partnership in this community, or we're thinking about applying to the Gates, or we're applying to this big initiative. What do you think? Do we have a chance? Would you look at our proposal? Would you, we're struggling with this. I mean, a lot of times they don't like to say that they can't, struggling is maybe too raw a term, but.
We'd like to get your input.
Yeah, we like to get your input. And, sometimes it's just a quick, hey, have you ever heard of this person email? Sometimes it's can we have, an hour of your time? It's good to be clear on how much time it might be involved. It makes me more informed, which is something that's important to me. But again, it just starts to build that relationship around trust, respect.
At the firm, Jack, we have your support. How do we say thank you, and what's your partnership role look like, or your role in the partnership look like?
Well, this goes without saying, but say thank you. There are programs who do a really good job, who have quite institutionalized personal follow-up to donors, thinking about what kinds of developments are part of the reason for the gift, and apparently to the recipient, out of the blue, getting something saying, wanted to tell you something has happened that we've accomplished. We're proud of it. We hope you are too. Maybe a little bit personalized if it's worth it, and if you have the infrastructure. But there are a lot of organizations who just send you the letter every year saying it's time to re-up on your annual giving. That's all right. And if there are reasons for that person to be loyal and to help the firm keep on schedule, that's fine, but it doesn't strengthen the relationship. Think about concise, sort of personal, appealing, outcome-oriented communications when there's something to share with these people who you are giving the opportunity to participate in this good thing. Tell them about it.
I agree with you, Jack. I mean, one of the pitches, one of the more successful pitches in Pittsburgh is from our local county bar association has its own foundation, Allegheny County Bar Foundation. One of the things they do every year is they do an Attorneys Against Hunger, and they do an email pitch. They send out an envelope saying, you gave so much last year, please give again. But among the things that they also do is there are really two things, which is first of all, they say we were able to feed X number of people because of the generosity of the lawyers in Allegheny County, and that's meaningful. And the other thing that they've done, and again, I think this is it's a little bit of it's more of a ploy, but it's something that does attract some people. They will get one of the local law firms to sponsor all of the overhead costs associated with it, and so they can honestly say, listen, your entire contribution is going to go to the 4 food banks in Western Pennsylvania that we support with this. None of this is going to our administrative costs, mailing, anything like that. But showing so there's sort of a fiscally responsible piece to the pitch. But I think to me the more meaningful piece of it is really these are the outcomes. We're keeping people in food. We're keeping people from having to go to soup kitchens, and these are the outcomes. And oh, by the way, if anybody wants to come, we are packing food at the Greater Pittsburgh Area Food Bank on Saturday morning from 10 to 12.
So keeping in touch, talking about outcomes, hearing progress that's been made. Are there other ways that you want to or expect to stay involved once you have provided support?
Not necessarily. I mean, if they have opportunities for me or people in our company to assist in other ways, it doesn't have to be obviously go on your board but volunteer opportunities. A lot of companies have big volunteer programs. We usually do a day of care. We usually do a day of caring in the spring and a day of caring in the fall, usually May and October. And we're always looking for volunteer opportunities. And one of the things that some of the volunteer and I've done both kinds. Some of them that sort of come in and paint some stuff and thank you for coming and we'll give you lunch and bye. Others, the better ones will spend half an hour up front and say, this is what we have you. This put meaning to it. Give meaning to it. Tell us what it is you're doing and why. And then at the end, do a little bit more. And oh, by the way, on the way out the door, if you want more information, here's a card. And feel free to reach out to us, and we'd be happy to have you do some more volunteering. We'd be happy to accept contributions. Let us know if you want to be more deeply involved with our organization. But using the volunteering as the hook to get people to have a greater affinity with your organization, I think is a terrific idea.
You can. There is a chance to accomplish something by bringing a law firm in at the ground level on a new effort. Something that has become really, I think, effective at delivering service, but also raising resources and getting more participants and more contacts within the firms in California has been the Justice Bus. In order to serve clients in rural areas, organized through One Justice, there are justice buses that go and have clinics with local legal aid programs in rural areas, and those buses are full of lawyers from usually a corporation and a law firm. Very attractive because it's only asking one day. And some training. The service delivery has to be the right kind. I'm not trying to get you to go into the hole on a program, but it's an example of something you can go to a law firm about and say, we could do this, but not without your help. Are you interested? Or a corporation and a law firm. It is a really good draw. They're all full now. Whenever they can be scheduled, and they go out and help seniors in rural areas fill out forms for government assistance, or or help immigrants.
Yeah, we're not unique in Pittsburgh, but we have something called the Pittsburgh Pro Bono Partnership. And what we've been doing there for, I was on the board when we started, so it's at least 15 years ago, is our local legal aid organization, Neighborhood Legal Services, does some of the intake and all of the training. But they will pair an in-house lawyers like my team with lawyers in the law firm. They'll train us. We'll have a help chain because poor corporate lawyers don't like to do stuff that sounds like litigation by and large, because we don't litigate, we negotiate. But one of the really good things it does is first of all, it provides arms and legs. It also gets, and we've done community clinics, we've got a veterans clinic, there's a bankruptcy clinic. There are a handful of signature projects that are under the auspices of the Pittsburgh Pro Bono Partnership, and the local bar foundation provides malpractice insurance. But what it does is you're putting together legal aid lawyers, corporate lawyers, and private practice lawyers to work on a problem together. And I think doing that, and I encourage all of my newer lawyers to do pro bono service. But doing something like that also gets them. I mean, I think the point that both Sandy and Jack made is catch them early, and train them up to do pro bono work, train them up to give and to participate in the community in that way.
And ask everyone who volunteers their time, in a nice way, to give their money.
Can I ask a follow-up
Sure,
question?
absolutely.
Because we are we're Houston volunteer lawyers, and mainly what we do is we work with firms and corporations to,
So I'm with Houston Volunteer Lawyers, and mainly what we do is we kind of work with firms and also corporations to do pro bono work. And we've done a lot of partnerships. I mean, we've discovered that firms like to work when they are clients with the corporations, and as you said, they collaborate on things that has to do with litigation. But also, we've noticed some of them are also particular about which firms they work with. They prefer to work with firms who show that their commitment to the community. But my question is related, and it's something that you said now to ask the pro bono attorneys for also many contribution. I wasn't sure whether working with us on pro bono, they feel that they've done their part, and it's not. Is this a good way to also lead to asking for money, or do they, because sometimes I get the feeling that we've done the pro bono work, we've handled your cases, we man your clinics, and that's the end of it. So I was just wondering.
The Zen-like attitude is, now that you've accomplished something this way, I'm going to give you another opportunity. They may say I've done enough, but you can't find that out without giving them a chance.
I'd also add, do you know what the number one reason why people give? Because they were asked.
Yeah.
So.
I was going to say Jewish guilt, but Catholic guilt. Choose your guilt. Very true.
Julie?
Sure. My name's Julie Riskin. I'm from Denver, Colorado, kind of wearing two hats. One, I'm on the board of Legal Services Corporation, but I also run a nonprofit. And how do we, as nonprofit leaders, do a better job of addressing what we like to call the overhead myth? When you said to say, oh, well, it's all going right to programs, that's actually a really ineffective way to run a nonprofit, which I've learned from painful firsthand experience. And so how do we do a better job explaining to donors, and I think some foundations are getting it more, but even some foundations, that you can't just fund you can't just give to programs, and if you work with very low overhead, you're not doing a good job, because what you then do is you skimp on evaluation, you skimp on oversight, you skimp on staff training. Again, I've learned this from very painful firsthand experience. So how do we do a better job of talking about that? Because I think some of why people think that way, A is I think there have been nonprofits that have abused the system, but also I think we get into our nonprofit speak, just like legal speak, and people have no idea what we're talking about. So I'd love to hear how we do a better job of explaining that we need to have overhead reasonable.
It's part of the cost of doing business. I mean, the answer is you don't run your business. I agree with you 100%, Julie, and while it was nice to have, while I used as an example sort of having the law firm cover the overhead expenses for it, because it's a bit of a gimmick. Because the fact of the matter is, you need to administer the program. It's a cost of doing business, and those are legitimate costs. I think the answer is, and it goes back to what we're told: spend the company's money like it's your own. Spend your organization's money like it's your own.
I would, it's a pet peeve of mine. I mean, we are working so hard just across the board on multi-year general operating support. Having said that, I would include in your proposals this terrific article called Starvation Cycle. Do you know if you've seen it? Okay. I mean, it's just really hard. It captures it. And in a way, again, that we work with our board on somehow giving to unrestricted operating support sounds, it's an audit. I mean, it doesn't really, again, describe the outcome that you're achieving. And we've had to work very hard with our board to help them understand that it's, one, harder to give away unrestricted money because you're doing a whole organizational assessment rather than looking at the project. And it is more strategic to give away unrestricted rather than, again, a project that's going to accomplish X. So we've had to sort of change our language, and we talk about strategic enterprise level investments. I know, it seems like smoke and mirrors, but it seems to at least get them in the frame of understanding that it's an enterprise is complete. It has all the aspects that you talked about, evaluation, research.
With the right audience, you can sell the institution. There, in two ways, there's tremendous leverage that you bring to bear. One is that for most programs, their activities are the point of entry for a lot of other help, pro bono lawyering and all. So estimate what that's worth and say, by keeping our doors open and running these programs, we leverage this much more help. Now, that's, I think, pretty well known and widely practiced. Another thing that I think is good for the country to understand better is the leverage that comes from establishing legal aid programs as institutions that are going to be here. It's only that can make it possible for someone who is motivated to help people or to address a given need to commit a career at what are otherwise below market levels of compensation. If you weren't permanent institutions supported only partially by government funding, but if you couldn't last, then it would be irrational for people like you to dedicate your careers. And it's a question whether young people like you are going to continue doing that if it's not clear that these institutions are permanent. You can quantify that. If you take the difference between the salaries of your lawyers, your professionals, and a reasonable market rate for lawyers, and play that out over their careers, again, we're talking about permanence. You get numbers in the billions of dollars nationwide. And think of that as an investment that you're making because you have an institution that will accept your gift. You lawyers. Now, sell the institution to the right audience. Not everyone cares about that, but it's really true.
Have a question? Over
Yeah,
here.
I think you are kind of saying what I'm thinking, but I want to put it in my own words. How receptive do you think that corporations and legal foundations might be to funding endowments, teach them how to fish pitch?
It can be. I mean, I think it happens. I think you're more likely going to have success with something like that going to our foundation or a foundation as opposed to the company itself. And again, it's one of these. It is a bit of the irrationality that we've just talked about, which is. I think corporations in general are still in the, I want a project that I can feel, touch. I mean, I put in a new furnace in a plant. I have a furnace, right? So we have that kind of asset-based, we still have that kind of asset-based mindset, which is I want to see a program, I want it to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and I want to have and so I think we're still very much on that end of the spectrum, not on what Sandy's talked about as sort of looking at the institution as a whole. I think to me I think it's a tough pitch to a corporation as to why they should invest in that or invest in an endowment. Maybe we'll come around to it, but I don't think we're there today.
I my little soapbox on this is I would really encourage organizations to look at their balance sheet and to see to the extent to which they have liquid net assets, money that is available for you to use for any purpose, that's unencumbered, and that is supporting you. No margin, no mission. It's really supporting the organization. To tie up money in an endowment that puts such a fence posts and restrictions around it is something you should think really seriously and long about. And my experience with foundations who are struggling to even just give in general to this subject is that it wouldn't be a good use of your time to focus on foundations for that purpose. Instead, it's individual giving. It's going after people and their wills and their requests, and that's a long-term strategy. But
There's a variation of that I have seen sold, and that is a rainy day fund, where and this is for long-term friends. You've got the relationship, and you can take the time to develop an understanding of the need, but there is a seasonality to all of your budgets, and you engage in some activities. The classic example is litigation with attorney's fees awards that you're hoping to get, where you have to be out of pocket in order to be doing the work, and you may get a recovery, you may not. It can be extremely valuable to have money that will be there to use and then to be replenished. It's not an endowment, it's not a restricted use, it's a pot. And there are examples around where people have raised what I found to be astonishing amounts of money with that pitch, but it comes from long-term relationships. Legal Aid Society of San Francisco, now called Legal Aid at Work, raised a very sizable justice fund for that, to offset seasonality both during a year or this year we're down. We expect to be back. We're going to go into it. Our idea, but not our legal commitment, is we'll replenish it.
I know we have several hands. I think John may have the mic. I'm going to work my way from my left to right.
Just two things. One, I was taught that if you give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. If you teach a man to fish, he'll sit in a boat and drink beer for the rest of his life. But Jack, this is really directed to you. We have spent over 30 years developing important relationships with law firms in Denver. They give really very generously. More and more of those firms have now merged with out-of-Denver law firms or national law firms. We are more and more often being said, well, we're really having difficulty maintaining our giving level because people will say we don't give nearly as much in the, I don't want to name names, but we don't give as much in Phoenix or Indianapolis or Kansas City or Minneapolis, where the firms are now headquartered thousands of miles away. They have no connection to the Denver community, and we are struggling more and more to maintain giving levels when there are multinational, international law firms that make that local relationship much more perilous and much more difficult. Do you have ideas? Now we say don't dumb us down, give more money in Phoenix and Santa Fe and Indianapolis, but that is becoming more and more of a struggle for us.
You described accurately a phenomenon that has a lot of other effects that are difficult and some of us regret. That being true, you can also continue to use your local relationships, the work to get to know the people who may be in North Carolina who are on the committee. You can also, we care what our peers do. So finding some leader and giving them lots of credit and saying, well, Morrison's doing this if we're good. We do care about that. You don't, with these kinds of increasingly bureaucratic institutions, it's more and more true that you don't have a long-term relationship with a firm. You have it with people at the firm, and their positions change. And the ability to exercise what used to be arbitrary discretion, give you something because they like you, somebody is becoming leveled out. So it is an issue, it is a problem, and it just takes more work and more effectiveness. But there are also more firms that do what we've done and have a foundation. So it's in a giving cycle and may have projects to fund and may act in ways that make different money available and more available.
So I think I had some hands in the back. Oh, where's the mic?
Hi, I would just like to address the question about the endowment. My name is Joan Bowles. I'm with Bay Area Legal Services in Tampa, Florida. We have been successful in getting match dollars from local foundations, and that money, with the recognition that that money is going into the endowment. So I just want to say that there is a way we raise a match with philanthropic dollars. Perhaps we'll raise $300,000, and then they will contribute $100,000 to go right into the development. And they've done that a number of times for us. So I do want to say there is a way to raise money for your endowment.
I think I saw a hand over here.
Hi. My name is Liz Marcus. I'm the Executive Director of Counsel.
Let's get you a
Yeah.
microphone.
Okay.
So we can.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Matos. I'm the Director of Prisoners Legal Services of Massachusetts. So we have a top clientele sometimes to raise money for. But we do have relationships with firms and have been doing that. My question, because I'm fairly new to this position, and we haven't had a development director for very long, is in your position, what are your feelings about who comes to meet with you? The development director plus the client, or do you expect to see the executive director there? And that's not because I'm planning on not being there. I would like to be there, but I don't know that that's the expectation of our development staff. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I could say we wouldn't expect you to come to us. If we were interested in you, we would go to you, and we would say to you, who do you want to have in the room to talk about your work? Having said that, though, when it is only with the executive director, and not the rest of the staff or anyone, it does feel kind of singular. One of the best visits I had actually was in Massachusetts group, I won't name. The executive director was taking, for the first time in 5 years, vacation. Had to go, it was fine. So the staff led the site visit. It was fabulous. And it was a chance to see what the staff bench was like. And it was a huge vote of confidence in the staff. It's difficult when you have clients, I find, because it feels so much like a red carpet, and it feels stilted, and it doesn't feel real. It feels like you're forcing people. So I just encourage people to be careful about that, and it's really what your folks that you're in service with, if they wish to participate and speak, rather than you're pulling people in and just saying, you've got to do this because this is a funder.
I wouldn't say the title matters as much as having, number one, somebody who's effective, and number two, someone who has in mind that she will be the continuing contact for this source year after year.
Yeah, and if you're pitching something that is a specific project, it's great to have managing lawyer or somebody like that who is real. I mean, if it's the executive director who's actually still practicing, that's great. Otherwise, I mean, if we have somebody coming in to pitch us on, we need to do an expungement clinic. It's great to have the person who's running expungement clinics to talk to us because they speak that language and can tell us exactly what's going to be involved.
Other hands? Questions? So, what is your advice on leveraging your partnership to bring more attention to your organization, to get additional dollars for your organization? Is that an expectation? Do you value that? Is it helpful? How do we do it?
Well, there's when I hear the words leveraged partnership, I think about multiplying resources. And so there's I would say, a technical way of doing that, which is framing whatever investment a foundation might make as a challenge. Whether it's technically that way or not is up to you and perhaps the foundation, but it is an investment, and therefore you can make it, if you give, they'll give $1 or something, or just, we need to reach our goal. This is an investment that they've made. So I think that's one form of leveraging. I go back to the thought partnership when I think about leveraging as a two-way. So I talked about finding, now you're a partner, a grantee partner, so you hopefully have a different level of access to the person, but saying, would you like to come and present on whatever they're interested in a community conversation. You could actually offer, depending on who's in their portfolio, offer to do a workshop for their other grantee partners on the role of civil legal supports in advancing, again, whatever their interests are. You could co-create, and I use that word, but I really mean you're going to have to do all the work. Co-create a conference session that could be here, that could be at Equal Justice, it could be at their fields of interest. Foundations have lots of affinity groups, grant makers in health, grant makers in income security task force, asset funders, grant makers, you name it, population and issue. So offer to write the session and submit it. Or co-author, and you'll have to write it, an article that might be submitted to a professional, it could be a legal publication, it could be for the newspaper, it could be for one of the Chronicle for Philanthropy. But that's a way of maybe twinning your expertise and your knowledge and your community value with the philanthropic profile sometimes, and positioning it in different arenas.
You ask a law firm to host a program about a very attractive effort that you're undertaking, or maybe even a pro bono effort that you're recruiting for. Invite other firms, get a well-respected figure, a judge, a client, to come as part of the host committee and praise the host firm for being so committed and generous. And
have the firm invite the companies that use its services.
Yeah, that works. Asking your loyal major donors to channel their money as a match for the right things, and to make that known and send those invitations to other people they know in the community who are more likely to respond. That's something that I regularly do myself. So.
Sorry. Let me just add. I'm building on Sandy's comment about thought leadership. Build on what you got. I mean, think if there are logical extensions to it, and talk to your target about, hey, we worked with you on this. We've got something new, something tweaked, something different, something slightly different. Is this something this something we can interest you in? And again, keep them engaged. Make sure that even if the answer is no or not at this time, that you then come back and follow on later and say, oh, We did that. This one we tried to do with you. You didn't have the resources, but somebody else did. Let me tell you how it's gone. We now have line 3 or phase 3 or something like that. Would you be interested this time around? And again, make it organic, make it a relationship, not a transaction.
So, and Sandy, just to follow up, the idea that Jack suggested about getting a law firm to host an event showcasing the work, is that an appropriate ask of a foundation?
It depends. If the foundation, like we have convening space, so we'd be happy to host something. That would make it very easy. In our previous, before then, it would be probably hard for us, and then it would become an event sponsorship, and then we go down a whole different path. So I think it just depends on the ability and the physically, that the ability to do that. Co-hosting something someplace else should be a no-brainer as a yes.
So we want to make sure that we're answering, all the questions that are in your mind, and that are going to be relevant to you when you go back to wherever you traveled from. So I want to give you about 5 minutes. I want to make sure that anything that hasn't been answered or that you're thinking about, we will take a shot at here. Anyone else before? Okay, I have a couple of others. Aileen, can we get a mic up front here, please?
Hi, sorry, Elizabeth Matos with Prisoners Legal Services again. So aside from researching how much a particular firm or foundation has donated to other entities, and I guess for foundation the numbers might be a little bit more limited, but maybe not. I'm not exactly sure how you all work. But I guess the question is more specifically about how much to ask for. If the firm has never given before, but has given, 25,000, 15,000 to an organization that seems similar, do you go for that? Do you just ask what they're comfortable with? Do you pick a number that you think is reasonable? I think on the one hand, if we're going in and pitching a project, then the project has a budget, and that makes sense. But on the other hand, sometimes you're going in looking for sponsorship, or you're going in looking for just general operating costs and help. And so is there, have you ever been kind of stunned by a number, and what would be your recommendation on that?
I'm not sure that asking for more than you can get hurts you getting what you could get. If what you're conveying is sincerity and something that credibly is an opportunity to do a lot of good, that you believe in, that you think you're, you all can let us pretend we're Atticus Finch for a day, and we get such satisfaction out of it. If you can make the pitch that way, if you could give $10,000, this is what we could do with it. I don't know if that's realistic. But in that attitude, I'm not trying to impose a burden on you. Obviously, you're not going to give it if you don't want to give it. It's an opportunity.
Yeah, I would simply say be realistic. I mean, we do some small grant making at the local headquarters level, and so we get involved. The business lead team gets involved in reviewing those. And we'd sort of put out there, okay, we're gonna have a minimum level. But we had somebody come in and ask for something that was twice the minimum, where they were effectively a complete startup, and no real track record. I mean, nice idea, really interesting idea. And we basically said to them, hey, love your idea, go work on it, come back to us next year because I don't think you're ready for what you're asking for. But that was the exception rather than the rule.
I think it's an art, not a science. I wish there was some way greater operating support, particularly for a multi-year period. The concern about a successful grant is one that doesn't cause an organization to go under. When we start to get to a point of being such a significant amount of the budget, and we know that we're going to be leaving, that's a concern. So I think, again, typically we're in a 10%-ish range when we're doing general operating support, and so that might be a $2 million plus organization. It just, it's a hole that if it went away, wouldn't collapse the organization, but it does make a difference.
So I think like the final question for each of the panelists is this one. Sandy, you said at one point that sometimes foundations chase after the shiny new thing. How do you continue to be that shiny new thing? And how do you keep that relationship going? Do you want to start with a few parting thoughts?
I'm going to say something that I know is just unrealistic, and I wouldn't work with those foundations that are going after the shiny object all the time. They're exhausting. I know you don't have the luxury of not doing that. So I guess I would. That's it. Even the shiniest new object right now, you are still relevant to it. I mean, there's just nothing that everything you do is relevant, no matter what the foundation's issues are. So if they're off on human trafficking or homelessness or bail reform, I mean, you name it, I can make the pitch that you guys are relevant. So if I can do it, you can do it.
Jack, how do we keep it fresh?
It's about the work. You won't find a law firm that will, except for rare, maybe foundation-type projects, give money to support something that their lawyers are not involved in by work.
Max, I think you have the final word.
What they said. Squirrel? No, I think it's exactly it is exactly that. You want to make sure that what you're pitching and what you're doing aligns with the values of the entity that you're pitching, and keep communicating. Let them know what you're doing. Let them know the great work you're doing. How you couldn't do it without them. And pitch them on, okay, we've done this. How can we take it to the next level?
Please join me in thanking our panelists.